everybody, Nurse David, your safety influencer. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me again. As you remember, the purpose of this channel is to help you to create the safest environment for your loved ones. As in future videos, I'm going to show you some very practical ways, very small ways that you can alter the environment so that you can make their home be as safe as possible. But what do you do when you see that mom or dad is maybe not as strong as they used to be? Perhaps they're getting a little bit slower. Perhaps they're even losing a little bit of their memory, their short-term memory. Maybe they're using a walker or a wheelchair or a cane. So how can you be sure that your loved ones are living their highest quality of life? Well, sometimes we need to have a little extra help in the home so that our folks can age in place. But where do you start? What's a CNA? What's an HHA? Do I pay somebody off the books or do I use an agency? Do I need a nurse? Exactly what do I get for my money? What jobs are they going to do? Will someone monitor them? Who trains them? How much coverage do I need? Does insurance pay for this? What if I don't like them? What if they don't like me? Lots of questions, obviously. This is probably one of the most anxiety-inducing things you'll ever have to do. And it's a lot to ask of your loved ones, to allow a stranger into their home. No! And some of this work is intimate, like bathing or dressing. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so let's get started. First of all, I want to encourage you to be as patient as possible with your loved ones. This is a big ask of them. You can most likely expect a lot of resistance at first. It's very tough for all of us to admit that we need help. Do you remember back in the day when your father was too proud to even pull over to ask for directions? So let them explain how they're feeling. Give them time to express their concerns and let them ask questions. Take notes on what I'm sharing with you today so that you can give them the answers that they need. So first and foremost, let's discuss agency versus off the books. There are a few key pros and cons to both to consider. Yes, agencies can be expensive, let's admit it. But if you do your research and you shop around, you'll see that you can get a lot for your money. First of all, agencies are bonded and insured against accidents and things like theft. But along that lines, no matter which route you choose here, please remember your loved ones, if they have valuables in the home, jewelry that they've collected, anything of significant value, I want to encourage you now to encourage them to lock that stuff up or place it in your home. Try to be wise and not have an environment where there is a chance that something could go missing. Before a stranger comes into your home, take inventory of the things that are in there, and if things are super valuable, again, consider buying a safe and locking them up or having them safeguarded in someone else's home. Next, agencies have rosters of caregivers. So this way, if the one that you had scheduled for long-term ends up with an emergency and they can't come to help your loved one, they'll have people on staff that can fill in that shift if your regular caregiver has to call out. Agencies have nursing supervisors like myself that will oversee the care of your loved one. We go in, we draw up a care plan, we figure out all of your loved one's care needs and make sure that the caregivers that are going in to help your loved one know exactly what needs to happen on a day-to-day basis. Not just with the personal care, but how does your loved one spend their day? What are their hobbies? Do they like to watch certain television shows or listen to music, go for walks? Do they have company come over? Maybe they even have physical therapy coming into the home that the caregiver can assist with. That's our job, to create the care plan of daily activities for your loved one so that the caregiver knows how best to help them. Also, nursing supervisors can often make healthcare suggestions that may have been missed without their presence in the home. Certain things like medication safety or other safety issues. Most agencies also have a 24/7 on-call system in case there's an emergency. That'll give you and your loved ones some peace of mind. Lastly, agencies are flexible. Sometimes your loved one's care needs change, and so the hours of care that they need in the home change. Most agencies are going to ask you to sign a contract and leave a deposit, and they'll usually ask you for just a reasonable amount of time if you need to cancel. You should not be locked into a long-term contract guaranteeing a certain amount of time. If an agency does that, run. There's plenty others out there. Remember, you have to search their reviews, and you can also research their deficiencies in state surveys online. That also applies if you're considering putting your loved one in any type of assisted living facility. They're all visited by the state at least yearly, and any deficiencies on the report and all the positives also are rated, and they're put online for you to review. Definitely go there and check them out. Now, if you are able to find somebody willing to work under the table, and if that's somebody that you know, maybe like a family member or someone that has been highly recommended that you can trust, yes, you can cut down the cost significantly. But that's probably about the only pro when it comes to off-the-books help. What happens if they suddenly quit or become sick or have an emergency? Then what do? Who will support you when you suspect neglect or abuse? So if you're going to choose off the books, please choose wisely. So if you decided to go with an agency, what's the difference between a CNA and an HHA? Well, basically, they're the same. A CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant, or an HHA, which is a home health aide, are both trained and certified in what's usually about a 6-week course on how to safely assist someone with their ADLs, or activities of daily living. Those are the tasks that are directly helping your loved one, and they include bathing, dressing, transferring, ambulating, toileting, and meal prep. But the caregivers are also expected to do very basic things like some basic housekeeping, sweeping and vacuuming, and some laundry. Just remember, they're not Mary Maids, and the reason you're paying them is really for the direct care for your loved one. And those caregivers that you trust can actually take your loved ones on errands and appointments like grocery shopping or to the doctor. So, if you're wondering if your loved one is actually appropriate for a live-in caregiver situation, and that is actually a live-in caregiver, they're living in the home, there are a few key things to keep in mind. Number one, the environment. A live-in caregiver is required by state law to have their own room. They have to have a separate room from your loved one. This can't happen in a studio apartment. So yes, the live-in caregiver has to have their own room where they can sleep and store their own personal belongings. And speaking of sleep, a live-in caregiver is expected to be given at least 8 hours of sleep per night, 5 of which must be uninterrupted. So if your loved one is perhaps starting to experience something called sundowning, where they start to get a little bit more agitated or having trouble sleeping at night, if they're going to be awake a lot during the night and requiring redirection or reassurance, they are not live-in appropriate. A live-in caregiver has to be able to sleep and get recharged and refreshed to take care of your loved one during the day. So please, know your loved one's sleep schedule. Again, it has to be appropriate. They have to be able to get some sleep at night. They cannot be awake several times, or they're not live-in appropriate. So how much coverage do I need? Well, that's individualized, obviously. But please note that most agencies have a minimum daily hour requirement for their caregivers. I'm just sharing this with you because it's important to know. Sometimes we have an expectation that, well, mom and dad just probably need a couple hours a day. Maybe just come in, bathe them, dress them, make some breakfast, and get out. 2-3 hours tops. Well, while that might seem reasonable, you have to understand that from the agency's perspective and from the caregiver's perspective, that's not really profitable for the agency as well as the caregiver. Please, I'm just being honest. Keep in mind that most of these caregivers do not make a lot of money. Here in New Jersey, New York area, the average is about $15 to $17 an hour, okay? So you have to consider, is that reasonable to ask someone to get in their car, drive, take their kids to daycare, come over and work for only like 3 hours in the home? It just doesn't add up. So I'm sharing this with you just to be open and upfront and understand that this is why sometimes you're not going to be able to find the coverage that you need if you think you only need a few hours. Agencies might not say these things to you up front. They're just going to say, well, we have a minimum and that's just the contract or whatever. So you have to do 8 hours or 6 hours. But I'm telling you now, that is the reason why. Requesting someone, again, for 2 or 3 hours a day for 3 days a week, it's unrealistic, okay? You will not find a good caregiver for that amount of time. Instead, it would be better to find someone to work maybe 1 or 2 days a week, 6 to 8 hours a day, and then instead of trying to spread it out. This way, they can plan out those days as days for grocery shopping, going to the hair salon, other doctor's appointments, things like that. Is there some extra work to do around the house? Maybe those are the days that your loved one gets bathed really well because there's someone there to do it with them safely. So to recap, remember please, the caregivers, their time is valuable too. They're accounting for the fact that they probably have childcare, they have to travel, and like I said, please believe me, they are not making a lot per hour. So I'm just sharing what I've learned. I want to help you to try to see it from their perspective. They are skilled labor. So please be reasonable in your request. Caregivers work very, very hard. It is a tough job. I have worked with some amazing caregivers that I would let take care of my own family. What they can do can be exhausting and draining, and I'm telling you, sometimes it can be a thankless job. And please know this, I worked as a nurse assistant for over 2.5 years while I was going to night school for my nursing degree. I had to do this job, so I know exactly how tough and thankless it can be. And when you do find a good caregiver that seems to be a good fit for you, your loved one, and everybody's getting along in what I call no drama, let them know that you recognize them. Caregivers that are respected and know that they are valued will do a really, really good job for your loved one. So when they are treated like the help, believe me, it will go south very, very quick. Let them know that you respect and honor what they are doing for your loved one. Next, do I need a nurse? Well, a lot of agencies, of course, do have nurses on staff to handle more clinical needs. If your loved one is now going to be coming home requiring, say, IV therapy for a week or 2 or 3, perhaps they have wound care or a wound vac, trach care, things like that. Perhaps they're coming home on hospice and you want that oversight. Agencies do have LPNs and RNs on staff able to handle a variety of different clinical skills. The hourly rates can vary, and most agencies can staff a nurse either from 1 hour a day, like I say, to do just like an IV, or they can do shifts up to 12 hours or even live in, depending on the needs that you have. And of course, the million-dollar question is, does insurance pay for this? Well, unfortunately, many people assume that, well, my parents have been paying into Medicare all their lives. Won't it cover some of this cost? It does not, okay? Almost all healthcare is out of pocket, with a few exceptions. One of them being some older adults were smart enough to invest in what they call a long-term care policy. Be sure to ask them if they have this. They might even forget that they were buying into it or that their work was supplementing it. Long-term care policies can absolutely cut back some of the costs. So ask your loved ones. There are several different plans out there. John Hancock is the name of one that's super popular. But again, ask your loved ones, do you have a long-term care policy? Check their insurances. Check their benefits, see if it exists, because if it exists, you're going to want to utilize it to cut back your costs. But remember, please, a lot of these long-term care policies have what they call an elimination period that has to be met before the policy kicks in. So a good agency can help you to navigate this. A lot of agencies do have social workers or a business department and somebody there that can answer your questions. You can tell them the policy name, the number, when it was activated, and they'll guide you through the process because there's obviously paperwork that has to be submitted for your loved one to be eligible. So if you are lucky enough to have a long-term care policy with your loved ones, please keep in mind a few things. The agency is most likely going to send one of their own nurses to come out to evaluate your loved one to see that the policy actually can be implemented. Does your loved one have needs for them to actually use the policy to pay for some help in the home. So if you remember a little bit earlier in the video, I mentioned something called ADLs, Activities of Daily Living. So most likely what happens is many of these agencies are going to look for your loved ones to have help with at least 3 of those, okay? And that usually is the bathing and the dressing, and usually something with the transferring or the ambulation, okay? So obviously you have to be open, you have to be honest with this policy, but I want to give you the heads up ahead of time, because sometimes people just assume, well, we've got the policy, it says it'll cover for a caregiver, let's use it. So remember, you have to be prepared, do the research ahead of time. Without getting too deeply into it, if your loved one happens to be on Medicaid, Medicaid usually does cover a lot of this cost. Again, you're not going to get 24/7 coverage in the home, but Medicaid's pretty good at getting coverage for caregivers inside your loved one's home. And then finally, there are some resources out there, such as payingforseniorcare.com. Do your research, Google. Some of these agencies will actually help you to pay for the cost if, say, you already have a loved one that's in the home a few days a week for a few hours helping. Some of these agencies can actually help you to offset that cost. Just Google and research and you can find them. I know this was a lot of info, but I really do hope that you found it helpful. Please remember, shop around, do your homework, talk to your loved ones, hear them out. As I always say, please, please, please be patient. These are really sometimes these are, to not be dramatic, but these can be traumatic changes for a loved one, okay? Things like this, it's admitting there's something wrong, it's admitting I need help. And again, like I mentioned before, our older adults, they can be stubborn. They don't want to admit that they need the help. So it just takes love and patience. Do your research so that you can answer their questions for them. Be reasonable, hear them out, and most importantly, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Please, if you did like this, like and subscribe. I will constantly be posting more and more videos. If you have questions, if there's a topic or a question that you have, put it in the comments below. I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible, and I appreciate your time. Stay safe, stay well.